And we begin tonight with Sue Averell, who's an accomplished artist who's moved to San Francisco so she could live where she wanted to paint. And she especially loves the city of San Francisco as an urban landscape. She currently has a show at the Hotel Nico through the end of September. And she moved her studios from Hunters Point to Marin about a year ago. Her work has been recognized and purchased by companies, individuals, and featured in hundreds of U.S. and international private collections. Welcome.
Thank you.
And congratulations for being a successful artist.
Thank you, Art.
You know, we just had this documentary on PBS on Frida, and she was always in the background to all the other artists in Mexico City as a woman. And it was only until the very end when she had this horrible disease and tremendous pain that finally she had her first work displayed in her own hometown. She'd been to Paris and New York and created quite a stirring with her style. Do women right now, are they at the equal par? There is no distinction now between male artists and female artists as it was in her time?
No, I think there's still hurdles to jump in the arts and in any industry that we're in. I feel really lucky that I've gotten kind of a little niche for myself in the arts. I've worked very hard to get there, but I think women still struggle for recognition. I think we're still thought of as the homemaker, and I think a lot of female artists, part of the reason for that is they do put their art career on hold until they have a family. I made a very conscious decision that art was my path, family
vocation,
wasn't.
you call it.
Right, yeah.
It's a
I
powerful
live it,
word.
I live it.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
a vocation, it's a calling. Vocation is usually associated with the priesthood or sisterhood in religions. And you call it vocation in your statement. And also, you want to create in the viewer of your paintings real passion. It's not enough for them to say it was technically interesting. You want it to be provocative and to cause some reaction. How do you do that?
I leave a lot of ambiguities in the image itself, a lot of lost and found edges. And what that does is you look at, for example, the black line is my signature. And you look at the black line and you say, well, that's not an outline, as if it, cartoony outline. It could be in between the shape. It could be the shape, like a smokestack on the top of a roof. So what that, in my mind, does is it allows the viewer then to finish the subject based on their own interpretation, their own mood at the time of viewing it, the lighting condition, whatever the case may be, and then they might look at the piece again later and see something completely different.
And you were intrigued with the San Francisco skyline in the city of San Francisco, but you're from Ohio originally?
I was born in Ohio, but grew up in Southern California.
Okay, so and there's not much to get enthused about. There are beautiful parts of it, Los Angeles, people don't realize. In the valleys and around.
There are, but the culture is not the same as it is here in San Francisco.
How do you mean?
Well, it's multicultural. There's people from all over the world here, and to me, that only enriches the arts in general. For example, in the building that I'm a part of in Sausalito, the ICB building, there's such a diversity of people there. The lady across from me is from, I believe, Italy. We just lost one of the artists who actually moved back to Mexico, but she's from Mexico. So I think that cultural diversity seeps into our art. I do a fair amount of traveling, which the color of another place, not that I necessarily paint that place, but the color of the place and the feel and the energy somehow seeps into my work.
The ICB is what?
It stands for the Industrial Center Building.
And that is what?
It's 3 floors and over 100 artists.
In Sausalito?
In Sausalito on Gate 5 Road. And it started out a marine ship building facility and has since, I think it's been artist studios for more than 30 years.
How many artists are there?
More than 100.
And is the public allowed to go in besides your yearly art show?
Absolutely. Not all, because some artists still do kind of sequester themselves away and want the solitude while they're creating. They don't always open their doors, but there's always a fair amount of people with their doors open every day.
And in that, and you were at Hunters Point. There was. Do they still have an artist colony?
Oh, absolutely, alive and well. Yes.
And is it going to survive all the redevelopments going on out there?
It is going to survive on some level. There are some of the buildings that will not survive, but the artists will. There will be a place made for them. That's
how do you compare the two art centers, the one at Hunters Point and the one in Sausalito?
They are very different from one another. I would say Hunters Point tends to be even more so artists that want to be sequestered away, except for a couple of times a year when they open their doors. Sausalito artists seem to be a little bit more involved in the community itself within the building. And then that's why I chose to be in two different art centers, to call them, because of that energy that creates.
We have had other artists here, we discussed that, and unfortunately so many of the artists, whether they were dancers or in the theater, their main concern is the high rent, the inability to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and the inability to make a living. They're almost like 250 theaters. It's very competitive and very talented people. But you have made that jump. You are you're not just a surviving, but you're a successful artist. How do you combine the sensitivities you have as an artist and the need to be isolated, which you do have to germinate these ideas, and then need to be in the corporate world and selling ideas? How does that happen to you?
I try to divide my day. From 8 to 11, I put on my business hat, and I do a lot of research online. I do a lot of promotions online. I might, set up a postcard for, an opening that I'm going to be having or something. And then I leave my computer at my home office. I don't have any computer equipment. I don't have a phone in my studio. I turn off my cell phone.
No one can contact you.
Yeah, and I shut my doors, and I figure if someone really wants to contact me, they'll send me an email or they'll call me. And if I start a conversation in the middle of trying to paint, like if we were having a conversation right now and I'm trying to paint,
sure,
I would be skipping every other word, or I wouldn't be keeping up with something. So I think it's very important for me to separate those two worlds.
And you paint how many hours then in the afternoon or evening?
I try to paint a minimum of 3 hours a day. Preferably, I paint 7 hours, but I don't always have the luxury of doing that. We just formed an artists association at ICB, and that has taken up a lot of time, and I find myself the last 2 weeks especially being an administrator.
So now you have another persona and a whole different set of...
I do, but it's really important to me to be in a group of successful artists. And I think there are a lot of successful people in our building, but I think as a group we can even be more successful.
What do you think is the quality of the students coming out of our institutes, the Art Institute, the Academy of Art, are they making it, first of all, and what do you think of their styles and decisions they're making in their mediums and their subjects and so forth?
Part of what I see coming out of the school now is kind of cookie cutter, and I don't know that it's that different from when I went to Art Center in Pasadena, and I think the same thing happened there. There were a few heroes of the time, and so everybody kind of gravitated to paint like that person. And I think that's a mistake. It took me a long time to figure out what my style was. I made this big drawing in '99, and it was scary because it was so different than anything I had seen. But that's what I had been striving for, and had been trying to do it for more than 20 years.
You had to work out. Did you have to work out of what you had been taught?
To a point. I mean, there's still the structure. To me, the drawing is extremely important, and color theory. I always have, even if I don't do a full color rendering prior to starting on canvas, it's in my head where that light source is coming from. I think about the topography of the land in my urban landscapes and how to build the buildings up from the ground. So those are all things I learned in school. The boring color theory classes and color and perspective classes, which I just hated. But are what I think make me who I am.
And you think that the students that are coming out, or even the art institutes themselves, tend to follow certain patterns they think that what are popular or commercially successful?
I think it's a bit of all of the above, and I think when you come out of art school, you want to make a living at it, of course. And I think sometimes people take the safe road. And I think if you step outside and look at the people who have been successful, they've kind of broken away maybe from the convention of. I mean, I've had people look at my paintings and say, "Oh my gosh, you do everything that I've been taught not to do, but why do I like it?"
Yes, yeah. We're talking now about the landscapes or urban scapes. There's one that I hope that they will show where the buildings are not nice and neatly organized in geometrical shapes. You definitely have certain things going
lots of curves.
awry too. And I'm sure that's intentional. I'm not going to get into, I do not want to probe into why you do these things, because I'm sure that's what you're asking. I want to go back to another question. We only have a few minutes left. There was a time in the last 20 years where there was always a trend. There was always the lead artist. And of course, when you look at the history of art in the last 100 years, they create the various isms and trends and so on. Is it true that now in canvas art that there are no more new trends or the hottest things that really, we maybe reached the end where there's not another great movement that begins because almost everything has been done?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we as humans always strive, and especially artists, for something new and different. I don't particularly want to see a bunch of people starting to paint like I do. But it, I guess, would be the biggest form of flattery if they were. If I were to start, you know, or another artist to start a movement, that is flattering. But it's hard. It is hard because we're not only enamored with the abstract for people to buy, but also the representational. So I think there's a lot more variety out there maybe than there was in the past.
You can obviously, with space, interiors, and or corporate work which you do successfully, they want something, and there's a reason why they want a certain something. When you are absolutely free to create, where are you headed right now? Are you headed into any new areas even right now that are surprising you?
A little bit. I've actually started, a lot of times I'll mix up a lot of color on my palette and then have quite a bit left over. And now I'm starting to try to use all that paint in an abstract way. And
without any representation?
Right, right. And so that's something that I'm challenging myself with. And then I allow myself to experiment more with the paint and in trying different layering techniques. So I've discovered some new layering techniques by doing that.
Have we seen any of these new area? No, I didn't think so.
They're hiding.
I see at the website you have lots of great paintings all over the web, and people should visit both your website and just Google your name to see all the different kinds of things you've done. But this new area has not appeared yet.
No, they're hiding in my studio.
And how long will they be there? Do you think there's going to be important change, or do you think just something that you're just experimenting?
I think it's just an aside. I don't see myself going away from the urban landscape at this point for a long time.
Well, we hope you don't.
Thank
Stay
you.
with it. The landscape is changing, too. We're going to need people to document that and grasp whatever is going on. Susan Averell, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Art.
And stay with us. We'll be right back.